Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be discussing my October 2025 State of the Collection. I currently have a 4-piece collection and I keep my 4 pieces in this Mirage luxury travel roll. From left to right we have my Rolex Submariner date 16610, my Rolex Submariner date 126610LV Starbucks, my Pequenet Concorde 40 Blue and my Pequenet Concorde 40 Blue. So what's changed since my previous State of the Collection review? Well, I have added a second Pequenet Concorde 40 Blue. Now, the question you're going to be asking is, why did I purchase the exact same watch twice? Well, I will explain. My father retired when he was 65 years of age, and the day he retired, he took his watch off his wrist, set it down on the table, and he said, I will never wear that watch again, because I associate wearing that watch with work when my time was not my own. But now I'm retired, my time is always my own, therefore I don't need to know the time. And true to his word, from that day, he has never worn a watch since. However, recently I was wearing my Pequenet Concorde 40 Blue you're looking at, and my father commented on it. He said, that's a lovely looking watch, what is it? Now, to clarify, that's very unusual because my father has no interest in watches whatsoever. So it's very unusual for him to notice a watch, and it is very unusual for him to comment on it. So I took the watch off my wrist and I showed him the exhibition case back in the movement, and I explained to him it's a Pequenet Concorde 40 and it's made in Morteau in France, and they also make the movement in Morteau in France. So he looked at the watch and then he put the watch on his wrist. Now, fortunately, my father has the exact same wrist size. He also has a large 8-inch wrist. And of course, the obelisk link bracelet is perfectly sized to fit my 8-inch wrist. Therefore, it also perfectly fitted my father's wrist. So he put the watch on wrist and looked at it again, and then he repeated. He said, that's a lovely looking watch. I really like it. So at that point I said to him, I'm going to gift it to you, and I'm going to purchase the exact same watch for myself, and then we will both have the same watches, father and son. And I thought it was a very cool idea, and my father agreed. So I purchased the exact same watch for my father, and I asked Pequenet to size the obelisk link bracelet specifically to fit an 8-inch or 20 centimetre wrist. And this is something I really like about Pequenet, being a mid-tier brand. And to remind you, this is a mid-tier piece. It's €4,000, mid-tier is €500 to €5,000 respectively. It's something that Pequenet offer as a service that other mid-tier brands between €500 and €5,000 do not offer. They custom make the bracelets rather like a bespoke tailor-made suit to perfectly fit your wrist size. So for example, you can specify you have an 8-inch or 20 centimetre wrist, and their watchmaker in-house will make the obelisk link bracelet perfectly to fit your wrist. And as you can see, I can confirm it because I can easily slide an index finger beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. This is the correct bracelet sizing method. I often refer to this in my previous reviews, and I also refer to it specifically in my Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41 bracelet resizing tips video. Because when the wrist expands in warmer weather or when one is active, in the lack of micro adjustments, an index finger width is the perfect width to allow for wrist expansion, and that means that an integrated bracelet piece like this with the obelisk link bracelet and a butterfly clasp, the bracelet will always feel like the perfect fit, even when the wrist swells up, because one has that index finger width of expansion. Now, the other thing I like about this obelisk link bracelet is, unlike other integrated bracelets on mid-tier pieces and high-tier pieces with butterfly clasp, this doesn't just use full links on the 6 and full links on the 12 side respectively. I often comment about this in my reviews as a negative, it's detrimental. This has a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12 side. So one can centralise the clasp, but the other benefit is you can get the perfect fit because you can add or subtract a half link from the 6 or the 12 side versus just one link, a full link. Now, I asked Pequenet to size it for an 8-inch wrist, so I know it will perfectly fit my father without resizing the bracelet because it fits my wrist. He tried it on wrist and it perfectly fits his 8-inch wrist. So bear in mind, my father has no interest in watches whatsoever, and he has not worn a watch since he retired at 65 years of age. So when he put it on wrist, he said, that's a lovely looking watch, I really like it. And I asked him, I said, what is it you like about it? Bearing in mind he has no interest in watches. And he said he likes the square shape because it looks like a 1970s watch. The other thing he liked about it, and he was surprised it had a mechanical automatic movement, because to clarify, my father has only ever worn one watch, which was a gold Seiko quartz on a leather strap, and it was 36mm case diameter, and that was gifted to him after 25 years service working for a firm. And that's the only watch he's ever worn throughout his working life after 25 years service. And he wore that up until he retired at 65, but then he had no interest in wearing an alternative watch. So I said to him, why do you like it? Because this is 40mm, and the watch you used to wear was a gold Seiko quartz, which was 36, and it was on a leather strap. And he said he liked the 1970s square shape of the case. But the other thing he was surprised about was how thin it is, because it's actually a similar thickness to the quartz Seiko that he was used to wearing in 36. This is only 9.7mm thick. And although it's on a bracelet, he was actually surprised at the lack of heft. He thought it would be much heavier because it's larger, it's 40, and of course it has this obelisk link bracelet. But he really liked the look of it, the luster of the obelisk link bracelet. And I said to him, would you prefer 36mm version? Because Pequenet also make the Concorde in a 36. This is a 40. You were used to wearing a 36, and maybe you'd prefer 36. And he thought about it for a moment, and he decided no. He actually liked the wrist presence of the 40 on his 8-inch wrist. And I said, would you like to try the 36? And he said, no. He said, I want this one. So I gifted him my one. And then I ordered the exact same one, the Concorde 40 Blue. So 9.7, and I refer to this in my review of it and also my State of the Collection reviews. There are two core criteria, and it applies to all my pieces that I've added to my personal collection. The two criteria are way up a watch: feel good factor and comfort level. Now, if this were 9.7mm and it were quartz powered, or if it were mechanical manual wind powered, that would not impress me. That would be nothing special. It's nothing unusual to see a 10mm thick piece with quartz movement or mechanical manual wind movement. For an automatic, it is more unusual, and 9.7 really is exceptional because this has a high power reserve of 65 hours. So I really like that. Feel good factor are 10 out of 10, comfort level are 10 out of 10. So I asked him, I said, what do you like about it? He said, I like the 1970 square look of it. I like it's not too thick. And he said it feels very comfortable. And this is the first time he had experienced a bracelet piece with an integrated bracelet. He's always worn watches on leather straps. And of course, his gold quartz Seiko has a gold case, but a black leather strap. And of course, this bracelet has a lot more meat. So his gold Seiko is 65 grams, and this of course is far in excess of that, but he was very surprised by the comfort level of it. And that's something I really like about this myself. The obelisk link bracelet is one of the most comfortable bracelets I have ever experienced. Now, I have reviewed over 500 watches on my channel in the last 5 years, everything from a €20 Casio F91W to a €24,000 Rolex Skydweller inclusive. And I can tell you, above all else, in all the 500 pieces in 5 years, this is one of the most, if not the most, comfortable piece I have ever worn. It's more comfortable than my Rolex Submariner date 16610. It is more comfortable than my Rolex Submariner date 126610 LV Starbucks, which I'll show you. And I can tell you that's the reason why, and it may come as a surprise to you, out of my collection, I find myself wearing my Concorde 40 more than my 16610 and my Starbucks respectively. Now, I absolutely love those pieces. The king piece of my collection is clearly my Starbucks. My grail piece, or if I had to choose one watch, it would be my 16610. That is my favourite piece of them all. Of all the watches I've owned, the 16610 is my favourite. That may come as a surprise to you. I prefer it to my Starbucks. But in terms of comfort level and feel good factor, the truth is this Concorde 40 is more comfortable and it has greater feel-good factor. The luster of the obelisk link bracelet is just absolutely mesmerising. I love the brushed satin finishing, and I like the contrast of the mirror polishing to the obelisk links. And I explained this to my father about the obelisk link bracelet. It's inspired by an obelisk in a famous square in Paris, the Concorde Square, hence the name of the watch, Concorde, and also obelisk because of the profiling of the links. And he really liked those design elements. But the point is, the obelisk link bracelet has a beautiful luster to it, and it's just absolutely mesmerising. Looks good, feels good, doesn't pull arm hairs, feels fluid, articulates freely. I actually find it more comfortable than a Jubilee bracelet, oyster bracelet, flat link bracelet, beads of rice bracelet. Every type of bracelet. This obelisk link bracelet, the way it just flows, the way it articulates is just sublime. And not only does it look fantastic, but it just feels fantastic. It's silky smooth. Doesn't pull arm hairs when the piece moves up and down the wrist, no sharp edges to it. It's the perfect integrated bracelet, and I love the articulation of the end links, the obelisk links where they meet the integrated lugs. They pivot beautifully. So my father really liked it. I asked him if he wanted the 36mm version. He said no. He wanted the 40, and as you can see, I now have the identical one, 40mm, but the only difference is my one is running consistently at plus 2 seconds per day, but Pecone actually did a better job of regulating this one. This is 0 seconds per day. So to remind you, they regulate the movement in 5 positions to chronometer accuracy of -4 to +6, which is stellar. But they actually go better than that because they attain an average daily accuracy of ±2 seconds per day. So my one is running at +2, which in itself is stellar. But they've gone better with this one. This is 0 seconds. When it's fully wound to its maximum 65-hour power reserve, this is running at 0 seconds, ±0. Perfect accuracy. This is actually more accurate than the Rolex caliber 3135 used in my 16610. It's more accurate than the caliber 3235 used in my Starbucks. They are running within ±2 seconds per day, which is excellent. But this is actually better. It's 0 seconds per day, but 65 hours. Fantastic. And it's only 9.7. So I'll give you wrist shots of the other two pieces, my 16610 and the Starbucks. Now, I do really like the 16610. It is my grail piece. It's, if I had to choose one watch for the rest of my life, it would be my 16610. To remind you, and I'll also explain the story about it and clarify, my father has no interest in watches whatsoever. My first Rolex Submariner was the 14060M, and I decided when I was 19, when I was a university student, I wanted a Rolex Submariner because the watch that sparked my interest was the James Bond film Live and Let Die. Roger Moore famously wore a 5513 with a buzzsaw bezel. But when I was 19, the 5513 had been succeeded by the 14060M. And I decided I wanted a Submariner. Now, it took me 2 years to save up for that piece as a university student, from 19 to 21, to have the £2,500 needed to buy a box and papers piece. And I can honestly say that was one of the happiest days of my life. It was the most incredible dopamine rush, the highest of highs, and the precise moment that sparked my interest in Rolex, the Rolex Submariner, and watches in general. The other watch I've also really liked over the years is the date version, which is this 16610. And you'll know from my previous reviews and State of the Collection reviews, this is the very last 16610 ever made. It's the December 2010, before it was succeeded in 2011 by the 116610LN, a watch which I have previously owned and reviewed on my channel. But the 14060M was my first Submariner, my personal favourite. And I always fancied a 16610, which I've previously owned. So this is actually the second 16610 I've owned in my life. But absolutely love it. Feel good factor is 10 out of 10. Comfort level is 10 out of 10. This is an iconic piece, and I absolutely love it. And of course, this is the 2010, one of the very last. So it has AR coating on the underside of the Cyclops magnifier, has the laser engraved rehorts, and it has the no holes case and solid end links versus hollow folded end links. So this is the very best of the 16610, the very last December 2010. Therefore, it's highly collectible. But point is, absolutely love the piece. Feel good factor is fantastic. Comfort level is fantastic. And of course, it has the 20-16 perfection personified taper. Of course, it could be further enhanced with a glide lock clasp for on the fly adjustment, but nonetheless, just a great looking piece. Absolutely love it. If I had to choose one watch, and bear in mind, I've reviewed over 500 watches in the last 5 years. This is it. This is my favourite watch of all. Absolutely love the 16610. And it may come as a surprise to you, but I prefer it to my Starbucks, which of course is technically better because it uses the caliber 3235 versus the 3135 chronology movement. Sorry, it uses the 3235 chronology movement versus the 3135 used in this 16610. That's the point I'm making. The Starbucks movement is superior, but I actually prefer the 16610 3135. So we'll move on to my Starbucks, king piece in my collection, but may come as a surprise to you, as I've detailed. I actually wear my Pecone Concorde 40 Blue more than this Starbucks because the truth is, it's more comfortable. The comfort level and feel good factor of the Concorde 40 is better. And the truth is, the comfort level and feel good factor of the obelisk link bracelet on my Concorde 40 is better than this oyster steel bracelet. And of course this doesn't have the 20-16 perfection personified taper of my 16610, which I've detailed. But the point is, does feel like a balanced piece, does feel comfortable, does look fantastic. I love the glossy enamel black dial contrasting with the Cerachrome bezel. However, the truth is it's not as comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, as my 16610, and it's not as comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, as my Concorde 40 Blue. The Concorde 40 cannot be beaten for comfort level. Yes, this is nice and slender, it's low profile. The thing I like about Rolex pieces, including the 16610 in this Starbucks, is they have a very slender rehorts. The sapphire crystal sits close to the handset, the dial, and of course that's something I like about Rolex. The rehorts are very shallow and the sapphire crystal is always close to the dial. It's something that Rolex do very well, but showing you my Concorde 40, again, this is something I like about it. The rehorts. This is the benefit of this being powered by an in-house caliber versus, for example, an SW200-1 which has been decorated or simply modified. This caliber is very thin, and you can see the benefit because it has a low hand stack height on the cannon pinion. When I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see it has that shallow rehort, and that's something that's often mid-tier brands are not capable of doing. And the reason why they're not capable of doing it is they're not using their own in-house calibers. They're buying in movements from ETA and they're buying in movements from Sellita, and of course they're thicker, and therefore the case requires more depth, and of course the hand stack height is taller on the cannon pinion. Therefore the rehort needs to be deeper in order to provide adequate clearance between the underside of the sapphire crystal and the second hand sitting on top of the cannon pinion. But what I like about this, because it has this in-house caliber, you can see how thin the rehort is. This is like Rolex level depth. And therefore, the sapphire crystal sits very close to the handset, sits very close to the dial. And the vertical satin finishing to the dial is just mesmerising. I talked about this before, but it's something I want to reiterate because it's something I absolutely love about this Concorde 40. When I reviewed a Vulcain skin diver, I came to realisation, and I've talked about this before, but I really like vertical brushed satin finished dials, as opposed to sunray blue dials, as opposed to glossy enamel blue dials, as opposed to textured blue dials. With vertical satin finishing, you have this metallic sheen to it, but it's not glossy and shiny like a glossy enamel blue dial, and it doesn't have the textured matte finish of a textured dial, and also doesn't have the same finish as a sunray dial because the light doesn't reflect and radiate in a radial pattern. The vertical satin finishing has a nice subtle metallic sheen, and the Vulcain skin diver I reviewed, it had that vertical blue dial, and I thought to myself, I really like that. That's what I've been looking for. Now, I've previously owned a plethora of blue dial watches: Vostok Amphibia, Seiko 5KX, Seiko Dress KX, and my Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41. They all had blue dials, and I absolutely love those pieces. But this is the first and only vertical blue satin finish dial I've had, and I prefer it to the sunray blue dial of my Oyster Perpetual 41 and the Vostok Amphibia I owned. I really like the vertical satin finishing. It's just like the Vulcain skin diver, which I really liked. I did actually consider adding the Vulcain skin diver to my collection just because I absolutely love the blue vertical satin finishing to the dial, but I thought it would be excessive, 3 dive pieces, because I have a 16610 and a Starbucks, and I thought adding a third dive piece would be excessive. I just don't need a third diver. I wanted a daily wear piece which could potentially be worn as a dress piece. But I wanted wrist presence, that's the point. I wanted something with meat on the wrist. I didn't want a 36 or a 37 or a 38, I wanted a 40. And this has it because it's a 40mm, but it's very thin. Problem with daily wear pieces that have integrated bracelets, when they're 40, often as I've detailed, they're powered, for example, by an NH35A or an SW200-1, and they're 13mm plus, which is far too thick. It's like wearing a thick slab, I'll put it back on wrist to show you, it's like wearing a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel, like a block of 316L on wrist. And of course that diminishes comfort level and feel good factor, my 2 core criteria. And of course the other option is you can go for quartz or mechanical manual wind, but I like high power reserve pieces. I like 65 hours because if you wear 3 pieces in rotation as part of a collection, it means you don't have to keep putting the watches on a watch winder or alternatively manually winding them on a every other day basis. If you have 65 hours, You don't need to keep winding the watch. You can just simply wear it for 8 to 12 hours per day and alternate it with 2 other pieces. So, I like this has 65 hours, but I like it's only 9.7. That's the point. I would still like this piece if it were quartz powered. I would still like it if it were a mechanical manual wind movement, if it were 9.7. That's the thing I like about it. But of course, one gets the benefit of it being automatic with 65 hours and 0 seconds per day is just incredible. So I like the thin rehort. It's slender like a Rolex. I like its 9.7 and it still has the wrist presence of 40. This really does have more wrist presence than a 36, 37 or 38, but we've still got the aesthetic. It's rather like Gerald Genta design, like a Patek Philippe Nautilus, alternatively a Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. It's got that kind of Genta 1970s design aesthetic. But what I like about it, and I've referred to this in my previous State of the Collection review, above all else, this is an original Pequenet design. They've been making watches since 1973, and although this does have a 1970s Genta aesthetic, it's not an homage to the Patek Philippe Nautilus, nor is it an homage to the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. The Pequenet Concorde 40 is an original design. The case shape, the obelisk link bracelet, this is not a copy or an homage to a Royal Oak bracelet or a Nautilus bracelet. The obelisk link bracelet is an original Pequenet iconic design. And I love the originality, and as I've detailed, it's something, as time's gone on, it's become more important to me, and it's the reason why I dislike homage watches. You'll know from my previous State of the Collection reviews, I've previously owned a plethora of homage watches, everything from Pagani Design to San Martin to Trasker. And I don't have a problem with homage watches, and I don't have a problem with Chinese watch brands. The problem I have is the lack of originality, because often they produce homages to Rolex, Tudor and Omega pieces. But I've grown to dislike that, the lack of originality. Originality has become very important to me. And what I like about these pieces is the 16610 is original. The Starbucks is original. The Pequenet Concorde 40 is original. These are not homages to other watches. They are original designs. They are iconic. The 16610 is the most iconic Rolex piece. The Starbucks is iconic. The Concorde 40 is an iconic Pequenet piece. The very best of Pequenet. I've often referred to it as peak Pequenet. And I really like that originality and the lack of it being an homage to other watches. The other thing I like, and it's become more important to me, is brand heritage. Rolex has brand heritage. Pequenet also has brand heritage. They've been making watches in France since 1973. In 2023, therefore, they celebrated their 50th anniversary, and at Watches and Wonders, they released this piece, the Concorde 40 Blue, to celebrate 50 years of Pequenet. And I really like that aspect. The originality, heritage since 1953, and that it says on the dial at 6 o'clock, Manufacture Française. That means a lot to me because this is made in France, in Morteau. The movement is made in-house in Morteau. So they're not just buying in an SW200-1 or an ETA 284-2 and putting a Swiss caliber in a French-made piece. This is a made-in-France watch with a made-in-France in-house caliber. So all of that adds weight to the brand. It adds heritage and pedigree to it, and I really like every aspect of it. Since 1973, original design, obelisk bracelet is original, in-house caliber, 65 hours, 9.7mm thick, 0 seconds per day, better than my Rolex 3135, better than my Rolex 3235. Stellar. So of the three pieces, this is the one I wear most, and it may come as a surprise to you. And of course, I'm now very much bonded to it because my father is going to have the same watch. Father and son both wearing the identical watch, the Pequenet Concorde 40. That's something I really like about it, and of course, my father really likes it. So that in itself adds value to it. I have great sentimental attachment to this piece, and I have great sentimental attachment to the one I'm going to be gifting to my father. So there we have it, October 2025 State of the Collection. Currently 4 pieces with 2 Concorde 40s, but now you understand why I purchased the same piece twice, and it's going to be 3 pieces with my father wearing the 4th. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of my October 2025 State of the Collection. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.